One of the issues about it's a strange one, but for a long time all these cars from Crewe were running on 15-inch wheels. Now Rovers had 15-inch wheels, and I kept showing diagrams to the board of directors saying, you know, do you realise how small these wheels are? But for a car this size, you know,
these are 16-inch. Yeah.
But before this, they were all 15-inch. And one of the big issues was the fact that you couldn't get the tyres, because you've got to persuade a tyre manufacturer to make a special tyre in quite small numbers.
Oh, okay.
And one of the big, I have to say, one of the most impressive things which showed you how the game had changed, when Dr. Piek and Winterkorn from Volkswagen were at a presentation I was doing about wheels, I just said, we can't go to bigger wheels because we can't get the tyres. And Dr. Piek just turned to Winterkorn and said, make a note of that. And you know, within months they changed it, because they had the clout with the supplier.
And Dr. Piek is the one who said, make me a Bugatti that goes 200 miles per hour and is as reliable as a Golf. What he said went.
So, you know, we wanted alloy wheels, but on the other hand, we wanted them to be Rolls-Royce wheels, which explains the very expensive stainless steel hubcap, which again, it's unusual for an alloy wheel to have an applied piece like that.
Yes. Because
usually alloy wheels were all alloy, because the supplier would happy with that. So this was an expensive way of doing it, but again, it's if you like, it's jewellery on a larger size. But it's a classic Rolls-Royce wheel by combining two different materials.
And it's getting closer to that disc wheel.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've still got to get air through here, ideally, or you've got to do it another way. But you still help to cool the brakes. Strange. I just put one quirk of life is that one of the reasons that engineering were on our side after years of not wanting to use alloy is that steel wheels, believe it or not, are not truly round. Now, I don't know what that means, but that's true. In other words, a steel pressing, which is welded together, is not as truly round as an alloy wheel, which is perfectly round. Now, I'm not saying you're going to bump up and down, but as far as balance goes and so forth, you can't do better than an alloy wheel. And the other thing, of course, is as you increase the size of the wheel slightly, you can put bigger brakes in.
Yes.
And engineers like that very much.
They do.
A big issue at this time was, similar to the bumpers, that legislation was changing quickly. And in fact, we had a department at Crewe that their only job was to look at legislation and try to second guess what was going to happen. Because some of the things were, I mean, some of the crazy stuff that was being talked about was having a car that could survive a 50-mile-an-hour impact, 50 miles an hour impact, and just walk away from it. I mean, it was causing crazy work being done. So we were very nervous about legislation. Some of the more sensible legislation was to do with things like separation between functions of a lamp. Now, if you think about it, most cars before this time, but really nearly all classic cars, have generally got a plant-on lamp unit. It's a fairly simple series of mouldings, obviously orange and red and so forth, with usually on a die-cast polished base. And they were just, I wouldn't say they were stuck on the surface, but they were very, very simple devices really. And they just put on the surface. And that was an instant aging problem for the car. It just looked, again, old-fashioned. So one of the things which I was really committed to right from the first time I was given any sort of opportunity was to try, I had to actually solve the idea of the separation between light fittings, because they were in contrast. I mean, England and Europe and America and goodness knows where, they weren't all in sync. So you had contrasting rules which you were trying to satisfy. And in the end, the only solution I could think of was to literally fill the back of the car. I mean, obviously you've got a number plate, but otherwise fill the back of the car with potential lensing, which you could probably change the actual injection of coloured plastic to actually achieve the different functions. So once you've got this canvas, potential canvas of lighting, you could then really do what you like as far as what goes where. You had separations between turn indicators, which had to be outboard, and stop lamps. You know, it was a balancing act. It was a balancing act between immovable forces, really. So we came up with a solution which was generally accepted pretty well. The powers that be liked the idea of this completely new look. And I mean, if you look at the back of a Shadow and look at the back of an SZ, there is just no comparison. They really isn't. And this is business about evolution, that there was no natural progression beyond the Shadow. The Shadow was what it was, but all the vocabulary was sort of frozen in time. So we had to break the mold somehow, and this is the way that was chosen to do it.
Some people have said this has quite an American feel to it.
I wouldn't argue, and if I've learnt over the years never to argue with anyone's opinion, because you know.
But America would have been one of the biggest markets.
No one. The Americans have never complained about this sort of appearance. In other words, the presence, and you're back to presence. You know, if you can accuse the English or the Brits as being a bit reserved, and the little sort of off the shelf lamp unit here is, you know, a bit low key, not pushing it too much, you know. But in actual fact, it wouldn't pass the law anymore, and this would, and it gave the presence that marketing wanted.
And when you see it in comparison to the small Silver Shadow, I mean, it's a big development.
It is. It was an instant difference, and you follow these at night or just see them in general. This solution, I believe, was the right one at the time.